Welcome to this Whole Life Action Hour. I'm Ocean Robbins, your host. Thrilled to be here today with Kathy Freston. Kathy Freston is a New York Times best-selling author of The Lean, Quantum Wellness, and Clean Protein. She advocates for a healthier, more sustainable, and more compassionate food system, drawing on her commitment to human, animal, and environmental well-being. Her work has been featured widely in national and international media, and she brings her passion for plant-based living to her writing and to her speaking. Of course, nothing you'll hear today is medical advice. We're sharing coaching and our own best insights. Always consult with a qualified healthcare professional about your specific health needs and realities. That said, you will learn a lot today. Kathy, welcome.
Thank you, Ocean.
You know, my dad and colleague John Robbins interviewed you many times over the years for Food Revolution summits. Of course, he's no longer with us, but seeing you now, I'm just remembering how much he always treasured his conversations with you, and getting to sit with you again is just bringing back those memories. And I'm feeling both the grief of the loss of him from my life, which is vast, but also my incredible gratitude for how many wonderful people he has brought into my life,
Mm.
including you.
Thank you so much for that, Ocean. And your father was and is an icon. I consider him the father of the plant-based food movement. He was the first to really write about it and explore so intelligently and with so much heart. Decades ago, he was the first one that I read. His work affected me so incredibly deeply, as I know he did millions and millions of other people. And he's had this huge effect that's just rippled out and will continue to ripple out, obviously, through you and your work and the network's work. And for people who he has enlightened and enlivened through the years. And I just want to say that I absolutely adored your father and appreciate his work like you cannot even imagine.
Thank you so much. Well, it had quite an impact on my life as well,
Mm.
and so many people in our community. And now the torch really is in all of our hands.
Mm.
So I want to ask if you could tell us a bit about your story and what led you to become passionate about a plant-based whole foods
Mm.
lifestyle.
Mm. Well, it all leads to a dog. Just my dog Lotzi, who I was absolutely in love with. I remember reading your father's book, Diet for a New America, decades ago, and sort of opening it up and closing it and like feeling this, like, oh my gosh, this is something I have to move on, and yet not being ready to. And so my mind sort of opened up and then it closed down again. And so I had recently received something in the mail, a brochure, and it showed a cow being dragged to slaughter. And I was a writer at the time, and I was writing about trying to become conscious in your relationships and in your work life, and sort of bringing the holistic body, mind, soul approach into your life with all things. And so I had seen this brochure, and I'm a writer at this point. And it's funny how life works sometimes. And it kind of stuck in my head. And I was playing with my dog, Lotzi, one day, shortly after I received that picture in the mail from some organization, I guess, advocating for animals. And I was playing with my dog, who was lying on her back, and I was rubbing her belly, and she was like moving her little legs, and I could tell she was having the greatest time. And I was like, oh, I love this dog so much. I just love animals so much, in my mind. And then this voice in my head said, well, if you love animals so much, then why are you eating them? And it was like, honestly, it's just the most inconvenient truth, because I was not that person who was on a path to plant-based eating at all. I was
Yeah.
like all about my protein, all about, the foods that I love, the burgers, the steaks, the, chicken wings, all of this stuff. And I thought, okay, Kathy, you are a writer who writes about becoming aware and using that awareness to apply to different areas in your life. So you're kind of a hypocrite if you're not looking under the hood of where your food comes from. And so I thought, well, I'm just going to do a little thought experiment here because my dog is an animal. So I pictured her in a slaughter line, just like a cow or a chicken or a pig would be in a slaughter line. And, if you've ever had a dog or cat, you are intimately uh, aware of their feelings. You know when they're
Yeah.
anxious, you know when they're scared, you know when they're happy, you know when they're hungry, you know when they're very great communicators.
Particularly hungry, they make sure you know all
Oh,
about it,
yes,
yes.
the guilty eyes. It's the guilty eyes, like, "Get it together, mom." Um, so I did this thought experiment, and I saw my dog, Losi, in my mind's eye in a slaughter line, and I saw how terrified she would be, shaking. I know how, an animal's sense of smell is so keen, and she could smell the death around her, and I thought to myself, I will do anything to save this sweet, lovely little animal
Mm,
from this
mm,
fate.
yeah,
And I mean, anything, like, I would do anything. And I thought, well, Kathy, if you are willing to do anything for your dog, why are you so blasé about the other animals who go through that very fate? And
yeah,
what's the
yeah,
difference between your dog and that cow? Because they're both animals, they're both sentient. Obviously, they have feelings, they have things going through their minds, they have longings, they have attachments, they have desires, they have feelings so much like humans do. And so I thought, it doesn't really make sense to me that I wouldn't want to see my dog go through that. And so I thought to myself, I just want to challenge myself to see if I can be someone who also doesn't eat animals. And that was the beginning of my journey to plant-based eating.
yeah, and it's quite a journey it's been.
Yeah.
You've been at this for a while now, speaking, advocating, writing,
Mm.
inspiring. What lights the fire in you to keep going with all the ebbs and flows of the world? I mean, sometimes plant-based eating is popular,
Yes.
sometimes it's not, sometimes it's a fad and it's in, sometimes it's out, but you keep on going to all the twists and turns. Why?
Well, I'm motivated by the animals, quite honestly. Other things came along after, which I'll talk to you about. But that's for me, the billions upon billions of animals that go through that fate every year is what keeps me honest and motivated because that's not slowing down. And I feel like if they're going through this fate, the very least I can do is advocate for them, bear witness to them, and advocate for them. And quite frankly, Ocean, lately, this high protein craze has got me so fired up because it's like I all these influencers who are pushing protein and they're, basically saying animal protein is the best thing in the world and it's like it'll make your muscles ripped and everything. And I'm like, are no one seems to be considering the life behind the flesh, right?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so instead of animal consumption going down, therefore animal suffering going down, it's going up. And so that keeps me motivated. And I mean, I just don't have the ability to not speak up for them because they have no voice, right? They have no power in this world.
Yeah.
So I'm really grateful to be part of a community that does care and does advocate for a different way of living and eating.
For those of us who do want to advocate for a different way of eating and living than the norm, we come up against a lot of sacred cows, as it were, people that are committed to certain ways of thinking and living.
Mhm.
And one of the things you've been so effective at, I think, in your writing and in your work is disarming people,
Mm.
creating a space where people can return to their basic nature instead of feeling polarized or defensive. I think everyone's got a basic need for sovereignty. And when we feel pathologized or blamed or judged or shoulded, we
Mm.
tend to get defensive. No
Yeah.
one likes to feel like they're being called a murderer. So when you see someone saying meat is murder, sometimes people feel like, oh, are you going to want to send me off to the electric chair?
Yeah.
Uh, and you could come off as heartless or uncaring about humans if you it seems like you're telling them they're bad people. And
Mhm.
a lot of vegans honestly make people feel a little uncomfortable and sometimes a little judged, almost just because they think they're living to a higher standard, and people are like,
For
well, what's
sure.
wrong with me?
Yep.
And so how do you in that context relate to people with kindness and compassion and respect, and also stand true to your values?
That's such a great conversation to have because I think it's like it can be applied in so many areas of life.
Yeah.
But I remember that I was that person, right? So I was that person eating. I was eating foie gras. I was wearing a fur collar. I was eating chicken wings. I was eating steak. I thought I was like the all American badass chick, eating a burger and having a martini. So, who am I to pass judgment on someone? I used to hunt and fish. I grew up in the South. So I was that person and I understand that person and I cannot judge that person because I feel like most people, the vast, vast majority of people, are really good, kind people. No matter where they stand politically, they are good, kind people. And with the animal stuff, with the meat and dairy and all that stuff, I think it's just a matter of we've been numbed out by the normalization of eating meat. It seems natural. We're told that it's necessary. And so we go along with it. I mean, my parents weren't bad people and they, fed me all this stuff because they were good parents, right? And
Yeah.
so I don't judge that. I understand that animal ag makes it their business to keep us thinking it's normal and natural. So I think for me, the more that I found out, the more that I understood, the more that I allowed myself to think about it without someone coming at me, yelling at me, the more I was curious and I wanted to learn more. I understand actually people who are angry, like the angry vegans and the militant vegans, and I am not one of them at all. And probably they've been angry at me for being, more chill about stuff. But
Mhm.
I understand it because it's traumatizing. When you see behind the scenes videos, it is traumatizing. When you see what happens to animals, you want to shout from the rooftops. You want to get in someone's face and say, "Do you know what you're doing? You've got to see this. Look at this video. You are murdering." And so I understand it's like you just want it to stop. You would do anything in your power just to make it stop. But then hopefully you evolve in your understanding of communication and what actually works. And I know that, for me, if I don't like the messenger, I'm probably not going to really pay attention to the message.
Yeah.
So I think it's on me as an advocate for animals to be a good messenger, to be kind, to be thoughtful, to consider somewhere that someone is and understand their situation, their mindset. And I just always, no matter what, I think I test it out on myself first. Like, okay, if someone said this to you, if someone talked to you in this manner, how would it land with you? Would it
Mhm.
land in an effective way? Would it land in a way that you would consider it? And if it doesn't, I rethink my language and I rethink my attitude, like what's going on, so that I can reposition the message in a way that it lands. And it has to be genuine, of course. You can't just say this stuff. You actually have to have respect for people and their own personal process, which I hopefully do.
Yeah, thank you for that. Martin Luther King said, "You have no moral authority with those who can feel your underlying contempt."
Oof.
And it seems to me that when we judge people or pathologize them, we really do lose moral standing in the
Mm,
relationship. And
yeah.
so having respect for people's sovereignty, their dignity, their intentions, is
And their
critical.
intelligence. Their
And they're
intelligence.
intelligent,
Yeah.
absolutely,
Yes.
right, and, I think especially in intimate relationships, it becomes more about power struggle sometimes than what's actually best. When we're
Yes.
trying to win the war against
Totally.
somebody and subvert them to our will, then they will it almost doesn't matter what the argument is, they're not
Yes.
gonna lose, you know?
Totally,
So
totally. It's
so
like,
learning how to have
what were we
genuine.
arguing about? I just know that I'm right and you're
Exactly.
wrong,
I just know I'm right.
I know, I
Yeah,
know.
yeah. So yeah, it's and one of the beautiful things about a whole foods plant-based lifestyle is that it's not just good for animals, it's also good for us. Can
Mhm.
you talk a little bit about the health impacts of a whole foods plant-based diet?
Well, here's the funny thing. When I got into this and I decided I'm going to I'm going to move toward a plant-based diet, I thought, well, shoot, I'm just going to die a decade earlier because everyone knows you need animal protein to be healthy. And I figured, I'm going to gain weight and that's just the way it's going to be. And I'm just going to have no energy. But you know what? For the animals, I'll do it. So I was like,
Yeah.
I'm just going to take one for the team and sacrifice my health. And lo and behold, I, started doing some deep studying on this. And certainly, your father's and your work has always been so incredibly helpful. And I really did. Get super excited to see that not only am I going to not die a decade earlier, but I will probably add significant time onto my life, my longevity, and that I will actually be much healthier and get to be at my healthy weight and all that stuff. So, as you know, eating this way can turn around type 2 diabetes within a few weeks. It lowers your cholesterol very quickly. It makes a big difference in your triglycerides. It definitely lessens your chances of certain kinds of cancer significantly. Um, cr- uh, Gets all kinds of inflammation to a way lower level, if not anything at all, very quickly. So I was like very pleasantly surprised to see all these amazing things. And when you see people respond with their body changing in ways that they didn't even expect, then it gets it's like one of those things that's like, oh my gosh, is this like a grand slam? Is this sort of like a good for everything kind of situation? And it kind of is. Like,
Mhm.
I'm not a religious person per se, but I think if there were if there were a creator up there, would they be saying, "Well, I'd really like to make people healthy, but the animals can't do anything about that." It just seems like what's good for one of us is good for all of us, including the animals and the humans and the environment, and that seems to be the case with eating this way. It's a very holistic sort of consideration of food.
You mentioned the environment. Can you tell us a bit more? How does food impact our planet?
Yeah, it's very interesting how that calculation is still not very well understood because it's hard to. So one of the main contributors to global warming gases is methane, and methane is created by cows burping and farting, and that gas is methane, and it creates climate change. So you think, how would like burping and farting like be that significant? But when you consider the billions of animals on this planet every year that are raised and slaughtered for food, that adds up to a lot of methane and also CO2. So in order to graze animals and feed animals the soy and the corn that they want, air, rainforest is cut down because they need that space to grow the monocrops and they need the space to graze the animals. Well, what happens when you chop down rainforests? Rainforests are like giant sinks. They're like storage containers of CO2. They absorb and they hold on to the CO2. Nature is such a miracle. And so when you chop down these trees by the thousands of acres, daily, but year after year, you are releasing so much CO2 into the atmosphere, which is, of course, going to create all kinds of havoc in the atmosphere and create global warming gases. And so this between the CO2 and the methane, and then it's more damage to the global warming gases than all the transportation put together. That means all the cars on the road, the planes, the trains, everything. It creates more havoc in our air than all of that put together. And then, of course, you've got all the poop and the excrement from the animals that goes somewhere, and guess what, it goes in these giant lagoons full of poop, and it pollutes our groundwater. It goes into the land, into the water, all these chemicals to grow these crops and to feed the animals. That gets leached and flows into the ocean, which creates all kinds of algae, and that's the problem. And we are just polluting every beautiful resource that we've been given on this little blue dot of ours, and so much of it has to do with animal agriculture. So
Yeah, such profound ripples. And of course, when we eat lower on the food chain, we can take such a bite out of all those problems. We can
mm,
contribute to a world where there's more biodiversity and intact ecosystems, where rainforests are standing and species can survive, and
mhm.
topsoil doesn't have to be eroded, and our aquifers don't have to be depleted, and our air
Exactly.
can be cleaner, our water can be purer, and our lives can be healthier.
Yeah.
Um, and this ties, I think, to one of the, I think, existential crises of our times. Thoreau said centuries ago, the masses of humans lead lives of quiet desperation.
Mm,
I think that a lot of us today are lacking a sense of purpose. And there's more and more research showing that having a sense of meaning or altruism beyond your own well being or personal survival is critical to health. It adds to longevity, it brings down inflammation in the body.
mhm.
It doesn't just help people to feel happier, but also to be healthier. Um, and yet, I think so many of us today feel this deep sense of powerlessness or angst or even despair about the state of the world.
Yeah.
And a lot of us don't feel a whole lot of hope sometimes. So, can you talk a little bit about how food could give us a greater sense of meaning and
Yeah.
purpose?
I mean, in most situations in this life, we are powerless. We look at the wars, we look at the conflicts, we look at, prices, we look at corporate world, capitalism, we really don't have much power in many, many situations. And of course we feel powerless. But when you think about your food, that you actually have this choice, and you have this choice. Like, I think the last time I looked, it was the average American eats about 225 animals per year, and that does not count fish. So that's 200, think of 225 little dogs or cats that you're not putting through that horrible suffering. I'd be super happy if I rescued 225 animals per year and like they had a nice life and did not suffer. I would be like, okay, my life is good. I've done
Mhm,
enough, right?
mhm.
And then, we don't have the ability to affect policy per se, but we are not contributing to environmental disaster when we're eating simply beans, greens, grains, things that grow in the ground or on trees. So we get this sense of I'm actually doing something that creates healing in the world, and I'm doing
Mhm.
something that feels aligned with my sense of purpose. You know, I, again, am not a religious person, but I consider myself a spiritual person in that I try to live a life that is based on my values.
Mm,
So my values are very simple: kindness, mercy, alleviation of suffering, responsible stewardship. And so all of these things can be reflected and acted on through the way that I eat, right? Because
mhm,
I'm eating with a sense of mercy. I don't want to cause harm. I'm alleviating suffering because I'm not going along with a system that tells me I need to eat meat. So I get to feel like I'm living a values based life, kindness. I'm being
mhm.
thoughtful and kind. And, I'm hopefully adding that to the people around me who I affect. So it
Yeah,
makes you feel really good and on track.
yeah. I'm thinking that this kind of ties back to our earlier conversation about how we influence people.
Mm,
And if we are trying to subvert them to our will, that's one kind of influence. But there's another kind of influence where we try to help people align with their own conscience and their own values
yes.
and share information that might support that. And
Yes.
I ultimately want to help people to create the lives they want and to be a part of creating the world that they want.
And you do so effectively and beautifully. And I love all your quotes, by the way. I'm like, oh, I have to write that down because it's so meaningful. But it's really true. Ocean, sometimes people will just say something and it turns on a light bulb. You know, you didn't even know that you could eat this way. You didn't even know that there was a choice. You didn't even know that there's a community or there's a movement or there are replacements to, take the place of your favorite foods. And so when you share things in a respectful and kind way, I think you can turn on the light for other people. Certainly, it did for me. I had never heard the term vegan. I had never, certainly back when I became this way, plant based wasn't even a term. So I had never heard that. But I didn't even know there was an option. So I think it's kind of exciting when you can talk to someone in a way that someone once talked to you and it makes sense. It's like you're like you said, you're passing the torch. you're
Mhm.
you're you're adding to this chain of sort of light sort of opening up, and that's a really gratifying thing to experience.
Yeah. One other thing I think is really interesting is that hope is not a spectator sport.
Mm,
And a lot of us look at the world and feel dark night of the soul and despair when we look at
mhm,
what's happening out there. But it is my experience, that apathy begets despair and action begets hope. That when we are doing something, anything that
mhm.
contributes, our take on the world gets imbued with something different because we're part of the equation now.
Yes.
And that to me is very empowering. And food is a place where we really can take a great deal of power and leadership in
Mhm.
helping create more of the world that we want.
Mhm, mhm, exactly, and it can begin at home. You don't have to go out and march somewhere. You don't have to, buy a plane ticket and show up in Washington. You can literally just go to the grocery store and shop a little bit differently, and that makes
Mhm.
a huge difference. And that's what I love, is that all of this is so grassroots. It's really first within ourselves, then within our home, within our family. It spreads out to our friends, then our community, hopefully to our, the politicians, the corporate leaders. Everything starts within and ripples outward. And it makes a difference. And by the way, I'm not someone who's like toxic positivity, because I lean toward melancholy. I am someone who's, I tend to be, um, very high on the empathy scale, which on the one hand, okay, I like it. On the other hand, it's kind of rough when you actually feel things super deeply. It's like, oh, do I
Yeah.
need to really feel this? So I feel this, and sometimes I get really down. But like you said, action, you know, feeds your internal state. And so I don't have to force myself to get in a good mood or be positive or whatever. All I have to do really is cook a beautiful meal and share it, and just sort of take a moment and just really appreciate that I'm so grateful that I made this change. I made it 20 years ago. I wish I could say I made it 40 years ago, but I made it 20 years ago. So for 20 years, I have not been eating 225 animals plus per year. And I can keep doing that every day, and I can share it. And that makes me feel really good and hopeful. Because if I can change my mind, anybody can. Because I was a Southern girl who liked her meat. So it's possible.
It is possible. Well, one of the things that's almost seems impossible to a lot of people is moving away from dairy products,
Mm,
cheese, sour cream, even yogurt.
mhm.
Many people find these delicious. What are some plant-based alternatives that you enjoy?
Yeah, I still love cheese. I still love sour cream. I still love ice cream. I love all of that stuff, and thank God there are plant-based versions of it. When I first started eating this way, it was slim pickings. It was like tofu, and that's about it. But now they have, oh my gosh, all kinds of yogurts made from almonds or coconut or soy. They have all kinds of cheeses. I found truffle brie yesterday when I was in LA. I was like, oh my gosh, that was my favorite. They have all kinds of mozzarella, so you can still make pizza. Ice creams are super easy to find. Let's see. There's just about, I think, every kind of dairy product that is made from cow's milk, you can now find made from nuts or something really delicious. And so there's no loss there. Thank God, because I love me some cheese. I really do.
You can also make your own in really interesting ways. We make a
Yes.
cultured nut cheese with cashews. We make our own homemade soy yogurts with
I want you
even
to be
soy
my
unsweetened soy milk.
neighbor. I want to come over and eat with you.
Yeah, I love tofu sour cream with that Morning tofu, which it's
Oh,
silken, and you can blend it up with some lemon juice and onion powder and
oh,
salt and olive oil, and
oh my
it's so
gosh,
good.
that sounds
Yeah.
so good. Your family is so lucky.
A lot of people, when they want to make healthier food choices, struggle with habits. It can
Yes.
feel like an uphill battle. You've got social pressures. Sometimes life is hard, and just making it through the day can feel like a lot without having to learn a whole new way of eating that
Hmm.
isn't supported by the mainstream culture.
Hmm.
What are some ways to solve those problems? What are some of the most common obstacles you see people face, and what are some solutions?
Yeah, we like our routines. We love our habits. They keep us like, our day is structured around these things. So I would say, like, make a list of your habits and the things that you love. I'll tell you a couple of mine. So I love morning tea, milky tea, and yogurt with nuts and some granola and some berries. Love it. And I really have to have that every morning. And so I'm like, okay, Kathy, you don't have to miss that stuff. Just try different milks, see which ones you like better. I personally like soy creamer because I think it's really creamy. And I have my tea first, and then I have a cup of coffee, and I just love it. So it works for me. I found a yogurt that I really like. And then like for right before dinner, I love happy hour. This is my day. It's my time of like relaxing. I put sort of an end to the workday, and it's the beginning to the evening. So I like to wind down with maybe some cheese and crackers or something. And so that's a habit that I really love, and I don't want to give up that habit. So I just find a cheese that I really like. And if I don't have access to a cheese right that second, I don't feel like making something at home, I think, oh, I actually like guacamole and chips. So I'll have that during my happy hour, you know? So you just make a list of the things that your habits are focused around. And then I'm a big believer in crowding out rather than cutting out. So
Hmm.
instead of saying, I'm not going to have, pizza anymore because I don't want the cheese and the pepperoni. It's like, no, I'm going to crowd out that dairy cheese with a nut cheese and that pepperoni. I'm going to try some olives or some peppers or whatever on my pizza. So I'm not going to cut something out. I'm just going to crowd it out.
Hmm.
And that helps a lot with habits because if someone tells you to stop doing anything, you're just not going to do it. And then I'm also really into, my whole motto of life is to lean in. And that's how I kind of got to be 100% vegan, is that I set my intention. I would like to be a person who doesn't eat anything from an animal. And I didn't know how I was going to get there. I didn't know how in the world I could change my habits and my life and social life, everything. So I just leaned into it. I was like, I'm going to approach it with a spirit of curiosity and a little bit of a sport. Like, I'm going to make it a sport to see like what I can find and what I can add to my life. And I just leaned in. And what I did in the broad stroke is that I would replace one animal at a time. So instead of, let's say I said, I don't want to have birds anymore. I don't want to eat chicken, right? And chicken is a bird. I mean, those wings were just, created for flying. It's just crazy that we have buckets of wings. It's like, oh my gosh, what have we done with our reverence for life and creation? But anyway, so I would say, all right, I don't want to eat birds anymore. And so instead of switching out one animal for another, like, okay, I'm just going to eat fish instead of chicken. Well, I don't want to do that to the fish either. So I'm going to replace that. I'm going to crowd it out with a plant-based food. So instead of, 7 nights a week, I'm having something different. One night I was always the chicken night. So instead of chicken night, I'm going to make that, Mexican burrito night. And so I'm going to make it something really that I look forward to. And I'm like, ooh, I love, beans and guacamole and salsa and, all the fixins, some good sour cream on there that's plant-based. And I'm just going to live with that, and I'm going to make that my habit. I'm going to keep doing all the things that I used to do. I'm not going to give up eating all animals 100% right away because that's going to be overwhelming. So I would
Hmm.
do that, and little by little, so maybe in a couple of months I'm like, okay, I found my footing. I feel good here. Now I would like to give up, eating pigs. So that means bacon and pork and all of that stuff. So what can I crowd that out? What would I really enjoy? So maybe I make
Hmm.
this, Thai night, and I find a really good Thai dish that I love, and it's got tofu and like a curry sauce or whatever. And so I experiment and I find some things that I really love until I find my footing, and I'm like, okay, I'm good. I don't miss eating pigs anymore. And then a few months later, whenever I feel steady, I'm going to switch out eating another animal. So you just really want to do it at your own pace, and to give yourself some compassion, because I am a real believer that perfection is the enemy of the good. And I tend to be I'm rigid by my nature. And so I do push myself really hard, and I'm very judgmental of myself. And I think, you should do it all 100% perfect right away. And that's just impossible to maintain your steady forward movement, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
give yourself some space and time, let yourself find your way. and lean into it. And little by little, you've got new habits and they're healthy.
I love it. When we walk, we're never perfectly balanced. The only
Mm.
time we're perfectly balanced might be when we're asleep, you know?
I
Um,
know.
when you're moving, when you're dynamic, you're always readjusting, and that's the point of being alive, I think.
That's so true.
Yeah, I love that, and I think that, I've repeated I heard you say years ago, "We can't make the perfect the enemy of the good," and
Mm,
that message is so resonant for me
mm.
because you're talking about kindness and compassion, and yet how often do we, use perfectionism as a bludgeon, for
Yes.
self-criticism, and we just feel worse, and then you know what? When we feel bad, we're more likely to make bad choices,
Yeah,
give up, grab some comfort food, some junk food, sneak it on the
totally.
side, rather than holding a space of love and kindness where we just love ourselves unconditionally and we keep going forward.
And this is supposed to be about love and kindness, right? We're
Right,
doing
right.
this out of love and kindness for the animals, for the environment. How about for ourselves too? And so when we can really, give ourselves a break and cut ourselves some slack and know that we're doing the best that we can. And I know a lot of people might disagree with me, but I would say, like, say you have one favorite thing that you just could never give up, right? Say it's
Mhm,
bacon. Like, I could just never give up bacon, but I can do everything else. It's like, great. The world is so much better if you're just eating bacon, every once in a while, and everything else you're eating plant based. And I pretty much guarantee you that that's going to go by the wayside too, because you've given
mhm,
yourself the space to find other foods that really make you happy. And what happens is you lose the taste for that animal food.
mhm.
I don't know if you've ever by mistake had animal food after you went plant-based, but I have a couple of times. And one of the times I think I was in Singapore or something, and I was traveling and I ordered a coffee and I ordered a soy latte, and they must have given me just a regular latte by mistake, and I tasted it. It was like the regular milk is so gamey. I can't even describe it in any other way is other than gamey. It's like got an icky,
Mhm,
gamey taste to it, right?
mhm,
And it was like, ugh. Because so here I'm like, I didn't even know. I always thought, well, real dairy cheese or real dairy milk is always going to hold sway over me, but it didn't anymore. It was
mhm,
like, ugh.
mhm,
And that's happened before. I ordered a burrito with tofu and I took a, bite of it and I'm chewing and I'm like, oh, this tofu is really bad. It's just like got
mhm.
kind of putrid tasting or something.
Uh-huh,
And
uh-huh.
I'm like looking at it, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is chicken. They gave me a
Yeah,
chicken burrito.
yeah.
So it's interesting how animal foods are super like pungent and gamey and very rich and tasty, which is, why I guess the human brain is wired to find it, because back in the day we had scarcity and we needed to find these compact calories. But I guarantee you, that the one thing you're holding out for, whether it's like, ground beef, hamburger, or bacon or whatever, the more you lean into a healthy plant based way of eating, you're probably going to lose the taste for it. And if you give yourself the space and time, you're going to probably arrive there of your own volition.
Yeah, taste buds change, and so does our microbiome. The
Yes.
the actual microbes, that we feed with our meals, in turn, proliferate, and
Mm,
certain ones proliferate that then like the foods that we feed them, which is part of how we form healthy habits, interestingly.
yeah.
Um, you
Amazing.
know, a lot of people are worried about weight and
Mhm.
carrying excess pounds. Of course, it's always important to say, I think there is way too much fat shaming in our
Mhm.
society. It has
Mhm.
people feeling bad just for being who they are. There's this kind of idea that there's some body shape that's better than
Mhm.
another. I believe that each of us is unique and we are all God's children and we are all beautiful in the eyes of the Creator.
Mhm.
At the same time, we also know that carrying excess weight isn't just an aesthetic thing, it can also be a health issue. A lot of people want to lose some pounds and focus on deprivation, the notion that calories in and calories out. So you just have to eat less, even when you're hungry, if you
Mhm.
want to lose weight, which doesn't always feel great and can actually create a rebound effect. But you focus on just adding more plants to the plate. Can you
Mhm.
talk a bit about that? It's sort of counterintuitive.
Yeah, well, this girl loves to eat. I like a plate piled high. I don't like to feel deprived. I don't like to feel like I have to portion out my food. I like to har. And the lucky thing is when you're eating whole food, plant-based food, it is deliciously rich in fiber naturally. It's like humans have a skeleton that our body hangs on. Plants have fiber. It's like their little skeleton. It's like little bitty bones in there, and that's fiber, right? So when you're eating um, grains and vegetables and beans and fruits and tubers and all these things, you're eating all this delicious fiber. And fiber is the body's superhero. I mean, fiber is unbelievable in what it can do for your body. So you eat it, it turns into a gel in your belly, this like big gel. It pushes out against your belly, the stretch receptors, and it tells your brain that you're full, that you're satiated, because it's pushing up against everything, right? So you feel satiated. That's the first thing. So you don't overeat, right? And then it pushes through your body, all that gunk. It just gets sort of uh, pushed out of all the little nooks and crannies, so you feel a sense of like a flatter belly. Things aren't stuck in your body. And it changes the way that sugar is metabolized, because insulin is released according to how your body needs it, so you don't have that hunger just juice up again. You're metabolizing your food in a really healthy way. So you're not as hungry, you're satiated, you're nourished, you feel like you have a flat belly, you just get to your ideal weight, whatever that is for your perfect body.
Thank you. It's so true because plant-based foods, of course, have fiber. There's no fiber in any animal products. They also have quite a bit of water, which
Mm,
also adds bulk. So you can have this overflowing plate that doesn't have an overflowing amount of calories.
mm-hmm.
So plant-based eaters can eat a lot more.
Yeah,
No question about it.
yeah.
You know, that said, the cost of food has gone up quite a bit in the last
Mm-hmm.
few years. A lot of people are struggling to make ends meet, have sticker shock when they go to check out at the grocery store. There's a notion that healthy eating is kind of for the elite or the wealthy or the privileged. What
Mm.
is the truth about that? And are there some strategies for making nourishing, wholesome food affordable?
So interesting, because it's actually the opposite. Eating whole food, plant-based is so much cheaper than eating meat and dairy, um, because it's very simple food. It's beans and grains and fruits and vegetables and tubers, and all of that is really inexpensive. Maybe fruits and vegetables, fresh fruits and vegetables. I'd love to say go to the farmer's market, but if you're on a budget, first of all, go to the farmer's market at the end of the day, because the farmers are likely to want to just get rid of whatever they have left, and you can likely find some incredibly great deals. But one thing that I do on the regular is I just buy frozen fruits and vegetables. They are flash frozen at harvest, and so often have more nutrition than fruits and vegetables that have made transport from one state or country to the other. They've been sitting on the shelves and whatever. You're actually eating very, very nourishing fresh food. It's just frozen, and it's all the nutrition is just captured in there. So I use a lot of frozen fruits and vegetables, and you can get that in any grocery store, pretty much anywhere. And fruits and grains and beans, if they're already super cheap, if you get them even in cans and little boxes, but I like to get them in bins. It's incredibly inexpensive. And I just make a big batch of various, beans every week and grains every week. And I just kind of mix everything together and find some delicious recipes. And I spend seriously next to nothing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so interesting to me in the modern world. We've gotten used to ultra processed foods that might have 40 ingredients in one. single package, but
Mhm.
simple foods can save money, they can save lives, they
Yeah.
can help us feel better. And so, learning to retrain ourselves to enjoy simpler foods can help us cultivate more satisfaction in the simple things in life. They say the best things in life are free. I
Yes.
think that some of the best foods in life are simple.
They are. They're really, I have to say, my comfort food, if I've had a hard week or, I've been traveling or whatever, my comfort food is a big steaming bowl of rice and beans. And I do a little bit of olive oil and salt mixed in there. And my obsession is raw garlic. I don't know why you may not want to come around me, but I just like to, to do cloves. I can do like honestly 6 cloves of raw garlic and mix it in there. And it's super healthy too. And make a giant salad, with all kinds of greens and seeds and, things mixed in. And that to me is my comfort food. And it just, oh, it's so good. But I do want to say one thing here, and I'm all for simple food. And that's probably 95% the way that I eat. But I just want to say a word for like the alternative proteins, like, plant-based burgers and things like that. I know they're not right for everybody, but for a lot of people, they're transitional foods and they're fantastic because if you're coming from eating burgers and steaks and chicken and all that stuff, you're probably not going to land on a bowl of kale and rice and beans right away. That's like it's a journey to get there, right? So I do think those wonderful burgers serve a purpose because you get to like go out to restaurants with your friends when they're not offering a bowl of, greens and grains or whatever. And you can have a burger when it's one of the alternative meats. I think they're just really wonderful. And there's certainly there's been a lot of studies in terms of, they are way healthier than the animal based versions. No cholesterol, significantly less fat, um, as much or more protein, and certainly fewer chemicals because animal foods they're not by law forced to tell you what kind of chemicals go into meat. But yet, plant-based burgers, you have to list every little thing. So anyway,
Mhm.
I personally am not against those convenient foods. I don't think it's like the thing to do on the regular every day, but I'm all for like adding them in from time to time because
Yeah,
life
thank
is all
you.
about enjoyment.
Yes, it's if it's not enjoyable, it's a lot less likely to stick or to be contagious and inspiring
Exactly.
to others. Kathy, any final words on I guess I'm thinking about all the people who wonder whether changing their dietary patterns is really worth the effort. What would be your pep talk for us, for those who are wondering, is it really worth all the effort to make changes in our diets?
There's not a single thing in the world that is more foundational to your life and to your health than the food you eat. And when you think of it in terms of a holistic endeavor, what's good for my body? What's good for my soul? What's good for me as a citizen of this earth? You know, the answer is always going to be causing no harm, feeding myself good, light, healthy food, and that's plant-based food. So to me, it's a grand slam. It's the most joyful thing in the world that you can do, and there are so many benefits that you don't even know are coming, and it'll be just one of your happiest moments of light bulbs that you really got and you worked it into your life. So I would say bravo and yay on you for going this way.
Hmm. So many benefits you don't even know are coming. I love that. We've
Mm.
been talking with Kathy Freston, New York Times bestselling author of The Lean, Quantum Wellness, and Clean Protein, and a globally recognized advocate for more compassionate food systems and more meaningful lives. Kathy, thank you so much for your brilliant work and for your
Oh,
partnership in the food revolution.
thank you so much, Ocean. I really appreciate that, and I love chatting with you.
When it comes to cancer, Alzheimer's, diabetes, heart disease, and other chronic illness, what really matters isn't how many books you read how many webinars you attend or how much you know. What really matters at the end of the day is what you eat and how you live. The science has given us what we need to know. Now it's time for action. It's time to implement and optimize your healthy lifestyle. It's time to get results. It's time to say goodbye to confusion and hello to clarity. It's time to say goodbye to bad habits and hello to good ones. It's time to fall in love with foods that love you back. It's time to join a community that will support you in achieving your goals. It's time for Whole Life Club.